Citizens of the world, welcome back to another Keep Yours podcast where we try and keep a few more dollars in your pocket. And today we continue with our COVID series, and this one is CARES Act PPP, Payroll Protection Program loans, and how you're going to apply, all the information that's required, and when are you eligible. So the first question we're going to go over is, when are you eligible? So they told all of the businesses we were eligible to start applying on Friday the 3rd. However, all of the banks basically told us no. And that's not surprising because they issued regulations Thursday night and the banks are still going, how do we do this? And you may think, oh, that's very easy to do, but it's not. As I've already discussed, they're asking the SBA to do $400 billion in loans. They normally do $25 billion a year, so that's 15 times more. And they're supposed to do it in weeks versus a whole year. So that's like telling you to do the same amount of work you did last year times 10 and do it all in one day, which means that it's obviously not going to happen. So part of what banks are looking for is the system set up so then when they put in somebody's info, they make sure that somebody's not applying from two banks for the same loan. And while we are putting on our forms that we agree to this, there's going to be shysters and their bank's going to go, well, if that's the second one, how do I protect myself? So there's a reason the banks have slowed this process down. I expect they will all be working all weekend, and hopefully Monday they really start putting in applications to the system. So if you're going to apply for PPP, and if you don't know which one, go back to the prior podcast I just did on deciding which loan program is good for you. This one's just PPP. So first we've got the application. This is what's given to us by the feds, and they said this is our application. Now, realize that your bank probably has their own application, and they're going to give you that. But before I get into this, let me go over who's eligible when and how this is determined, because it should be much more practical, and they did a terrible job of explaining this. So they told independent contractors and self-employed people, which is basically the same thing, I don't know how that's really different, that you're going to apply later. So here's the easiest way that I can describe, and I may not be 100% certain on this because, again, federal regulation lacks telling us what is going on. But here's the general principle. If you pay wages and you file a 941, i.e. you withhold taxes from people, you pay those to the government, and you file 941s and you file a W-3 and W-2s at year end that you send to the Social Security Administration, then you are an employer, i.e. your business employs people, even if you're the sole owner of it. So if you have a single member LLC that you run as an S-Corp and you pay yourself wages, you are an employer, and you have 941s and you have a W-3 to back that up. Now, for some of those of us who have used the S corporation designation to help shelter some of our money from self-employment taxes, this one kind of gives a little kick in the pants back to, well, is that the best thing? Well, so be it, because honestly, if you're not making that much money, you go file unemployment, you can get a few grand a month for that anyway. Kind of works out almost about the same. And also, if you're self-employed, you're the sole member, you get to add in additional things, such as what you paid in retirement contributions and also what you paid for health insurance. So those will help out a little bit as well. But basically, if you file W-3, you're already eligible to file with a bank. Now, how's that going to work at banks? Well, if you've had a loan at a bank before, you're going to be first in line. And the reason is that you're in their system to create a loan. So banks don't do things quickly. For those of us who are always asking for money from banks, we know that if we ask today, we are not going to get tomorrow. You ask long in advance for any money that you need because the bank process is typically double check, triple check, quadruple check, check again, ask for more information, make sure all that's right again, check, 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 check. To the extent that even if you're a person who's just an employee, right, and you're going to go get a home loan now, the day your home loan closes, they typically still call your employer for employment verification. Banks are doing the same thing all the time. Verify, 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 verify. So running fast doesn't work for them. And just getting you, if you haven't done any business with them, getting you into their loan system takes a while. So the first thing that's going to happen is existing customers who have loans and are in the loan system. Because the next thing that has to come out of the loan is loan closing document paperwork. Well, bank can't give that to you if you're not in their system. So it takes a while for all of these systems that are not meant to work at hyperspeed and are meant to work with very few transactions to start working quickly. So instead, it's going to be layered. So the first layer is if you've had loans with your bank, they're going to be able to process your information more quickly than somebody who just walked in the door or somebody who may have a checking account but has never had a loan because you're not in the loan system. And while you think a bank is a system, it's not. It's not the way that it works. So for small businesses who are in the loan system, they're going to get processed first. Then will come small businesses who are not in the loan system who have to get set up. Then will come the independent contractors and self-employed, those who don't have a W-3 and 941s. And for you guys, they have to figure out how we're going to do this calculation. Is it just, if you filed a Schedule C, you had $100,000 in gross receipts, you had $30,000 of expenses, you made 70 grand. That's your income. That's what you paid self-employment tax on. That's probably the 1/12 number that they will use to multiply times 2.5 to get to your loan amount. But this has to be determined, and they're waiting for the government to tell them. So while the government literally came out with rules on Friday, or Thursday night, which was crazy, and then they expect the banks to implement by Friday. One of the things they came out with was independent contractors do not go on employers, they're themselves. So if you're going to apply for PPP, what are we looking at? All right, well, we go back to the actual CARES Act, and I'm going to go to what does this include? Okay, so how am I getting to my payroll costs? I'm going to get gross wages plus healthcare premiums plus retirement benefits, and make sure healthcare premiums are those paid by the employer. So if you didn't pay it, if you collected it from your employee and paid it on their behalf, that doesn't count. Or let's say you covered $500 a month, but their premium was $1,000. Well, the $500 a month you can add in. The other $500 you collected from them and they paid, you don't get to deduct that. Things the business paid for gross wages, healthcare, retirement benefits, state taxes, up to a maximum of $100,000. So I built a worksheet for everybody if they need some help with this. And this is basically the kick out from QuickBooks that I modified. And we'll just say this is the wages report. So if you use QuickBooks and you need to do this wages, you want this worksheet, just go to your reports, employees and wages, employees earning summary, and put in last year for your dates. And it'll kick you this out with tons of columns. So the only columns you want to keep are the wage columns. So these are my wage columns here. Here's my state unemployment benefits. Here's the healthcare payments, retirement benefits. I get to a total. But since it's limited to $100,000, I have to go over here. And all I did was put in a little if calculation here. If Q4, this number is greater than $100,000, use $100,000. Otherwise, use this number. And so you can see as we go down here and compare, same, limited to $100,000, same, limited to $100,000. Okay, I get my total. This is what I paid for exactly what the CARES Act says I can deduct. Payroll, oops, didn't want to move that. Payroll, healthcare, retirement benefits, state taxes, maximum. Now, the one thing that's still in here is if you issued someone a 1099, you can probably include them if you're going to keep paying them. But the idea here is to not double dip the system. The idea here is not, hey, I have an independent contractor that I pay, so I'm going to keep paying him. Okay, fine. Then I'm going to go get money and I'm going to keep paying him. And I'm going to, if I 1099 them. If you didn't 1099 them, they're an independent contractor. You can't go take anything. That's what the new reg said that came out Thursday night. But if that person can also go get their own. And so this is where it's, hey, I'll go get it for the independent contractor. Independent contractor goes and gets their own as well. And now all of a sudden the same person's got, the government's trying to pay the wages for 2 months. It's not trying to pay the same wages twice. So that's the way the system's designed. Hopefully most people use it that way. I'm sure there are going to be some people who, inflate numbers. And this is, again, why the banks are slowed down. What documentation do they need to verify the payments are what they are and that the totals are actually correct? And the reason the banks have to confirm that information is because if they don't, they're worried the government won't back the loan. And if someone doesn't pay it, the bank's on the hook. So that's what's deductible. So we have our worksheet here. We have our total eligible wages for the year. And for the most part, from what I'm hearing, everyone's going with 2019. You can do, specifically in the law, it says prior 12 months. So you could look through end of Q1 2019 through Q1 2020 if that changes things. If you had a dramatic shift in your business in the beginning of the year, then that might make a difference. For most people, it's not material and it's very minimal differences. So they're just using 2019 because it's easy. And it's the easiest info to get. Q1 just ended, so getting Q1 information confirmed and being able to verify that for banks is hard. Being able to verify a W-3 that's already been filed along with 941s already filed for 2019, easier. So this is the easier way to approval is what I'm going to say. So I've got total eligible wages. I'm going to divide that by 12 to get my monthly, multiply it times 2.5 to get my maximum loan amount. So that's what the maximum loan amount would be if this is all your info. And this is not all my info. I just made all this shit up out of what I pulled down for my employees for mine. But this is what I did is I kept state benefits in, included healthcare payments, retirement benefits. Now, if you kick this out of QuickBooks, this total calculation you're going to have to redo to make sure that it's the right calculation, because typically you got a lot of pluses and minuses in there, and then it's not actually pulling off of all of these numbers as it should be. So just make sure you change that, do your limit calculation. This will get you to your maximum loan amount. That's what's going to end up on your application. So on the application right here, average monthly payroll number that I need times 2.5, those numbers get pulled right off the worksheet, as well as the number of employees. All right, so if I'm going to apply for this, I have to do this program borrower application, and I'm going to have to substantiate that. So what does substantiation mean when I'm giving it to the bank? Well, also the bank's got their own form, but I'm going to show you guys what I got from my bank literally last night, very, very late. Let me see if I can't blow this up. So I pulled this out of the email. I'm not telling you who all my people are. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus with this. I'm just trying to literally show you what's been asked for. Okay, so they asked for, and they realized that the reason they say attachment is because they attach these to the email. So my bank is asking for, and again, this may not be the same across the board. And when we get to independent contractors and sole proprietors, they're probably going to ask for different things. Obviously, instead of a 941, you're going to have a Schedule C. And if you haven't got your taxes filed and you're an independent contractor, you haven't filed 2019 taxes, I highly recommend you try and get that done so that you can give them that as evidence. Okay, so here's what they're asking for. SBA specific personal financial statement. That is an actual form from the SBA that you have to apply to get an SBA loan. So here's your 7A loan, and that's what they're calling this. This is a 7A loan. And they're saying, please fill this out. So as the small business owner, if you've ever been through getting loans before, and if you've ever dealt with the SBA, this is kind of common stuff. We do this all the time. I basically have one of these that I update every year because it's required every year. And all of a sudden we're updating it month by month. They're going to ask for all of the things: cash, savings, all of your assets, all of your liabilities, sources of income, description. Now, this isn't necessarily required because it's not in the act, but basically banks don't know what really is required. So they're saying, hey, every SBA loan we've ever dealt with in the past required this. So let's get it filled out. That way we're covered and we don't have to worry about it. Makes sense to me. Pain in the ass form to fill out. Everybody hates this shit. Also, there's a part that's hard to do. Other assets. So if you own a business like I do right now, then sometimes for your assets, you would put in the value of that business. Well, what is the value of the business today? With coronavirus unknown, who knows, right? And I mean, literally, you're going to fill this out because look at it. Here's stocks and bonds. Here's real estate. What's my real estate worth today? I kind of don't know. So I'm going to put in what was the last estimate, or you can put in what does the county tax me based off of, right? And when you just, so as long as you have some reason for the number you used, and then for this other assets one that would usually be the value of my businesses, I wrote in down here in the description of other personal property and assets that I did not include the value of the business because right now it's hard to determine and there's a lot of unknowns. So they're going to require this form from you. Next thing they're going to require, a debt schedule to borrowing entity. Again, this is my bank specific. Not every bank may do this, but they asked for this. This is very simply what loans does the business have? And what they're trying to get in here is there is a part of the CARES Act when it comes to forgiveness, right? So we go to loan forgiveness over here. Here's what it can be used for. A mortgage obligation. Oh, that's the terms. Here we go. So payroll cost. Any payment of interest on any covered mortgage obligation. Any covered payment on any rent obligation and covered utility payments. So I don't know why they're asking for the debt schedules, honestly. Before in the Senate version of this, they were going to allow you to deduct any interest on loan payments. And now it says just on interest. So sounds like they're just getting a debt schedule because that's normally what they do. General SBA application, that's the 7A application. So that's a normal SBA request. And they're also going to have in here, this was theirs. So this was not the PPP application. That's number 4 down here. Attachment number 3, general SBA application. That's bank specific. So that was a form my bank sent to me that said, hey, we want you to fill this out as a loan request form from our bank. Because if we just fill out the PPP application, well, that's not a request to my specific bank. That's just a request basically to the SBA. That's what they require. Well, your own bank has their own application form they want you to fill out. Okay, then we get into here's what we need for substantiation. So we say our payroll costs, we pull up our payroll calculation, and we say, here's my payroll costs. Okay, well, what do you have to substantiate that? And obviously, they're not going to be able to get you substantiation for healthcare and retirement benefits and all of that. A lot of that's going to come off your tax returns and what you pay. And they'll probably require more substantiation when we go to loan forgiveness than they will up front. So here's what they're asking for. Give me all the 941s that you filed with the IRS. Evidence of state local taxes for wages. So that might be the filing forms that you paid for unemployment, or that might be the annual form that you filed for unemployment. Anything that shows what you paid. They say payroll processor records. I don't even know what that means, but that could be if you've got a third party doing your payroll. They're saying, well, send us what they've sent you. W-2s and 1099s and P&L or tax return. And this is what they're saying. So this is what they're requesting from the sole proprietor and independent contractor is your personal P&L or your tax returns that's going to show that these are your wage amounts. This is an eligible amount. Confirmation of EIDL if one was obtained in 2020. So if you do an EIDL, you're potentially eligible for $10,000 of loan forgiveness for the first $10,000 they give you. If you do PPP, you're eligible for loan forgiveness. You can't combine. So if I get this 10, whatever I got over here that's going to be forgiven, this 10's got to come out. So then they're going to ask you if you've gotten this EIDL $10,000 up front loan, you got to tell us so we can make sure that we note that and we don't forgive that later. Legal documents for applying entity. That's if you have not established a banking relationship with them before, they're going to need to know what your EIN number is. So they're going to want to see that. They're going to want to see articles of incorporation. They're going to want to see any other documentation that they may need to prove that this is a legal entity, that this has been filed before. A lot of times that's also tax returns. They're going to ask for multiple years tax returns. They're also asking for a driver's license to verify identities. So they're asking for a lot of backup documents, which is not uncommon. This is the normal business practice of asking for tons of documentation. But this is what my bank has asked me for today. So they want all of it. Now, if you've given them tax returns, that helps a lot. So tax returns are usually an automatic. You give them their tax returns proved what you spent on, or they don't prove what you spent, but they're you attesting to the federal government to say, these are the expenses I'm taking and they're legitimate. Because payroll records might show how much you're paying for retirement benefits, for example, right? But they're only going to show, let's say, the employer contribution. Let's say it's a 3% match. So it shows in payroll statements they made a 3% match. Well, maybe you made a profit sharing contribution at the end of the year. It's not going to be shown. Just doesn't end up shown because it's not something that that's run through payroll. It's a separate payment that you make directly to them. Now, when it comes to the loan forgiveness part, we're probably going to end up coming with a lot more documentation, and who knows. But that's for another day. First, today, let's get our money. Getting it forgiven, that's down the road. And we'll get to that when we get to that. All right, so those are the documents that you need to give to your bank. So if you haven't been through those, you should go through those. And that's how you're going to apply. You're going to give them all of this information. Now, if you don't have a bank that you're dealing with right now, if I go back to show you this schedule right here. So debt schedule, general SBA application. And this is what they gave to us. So if you don't have a bank that you deal with already, you got to go find one. Then you're going to have to supply them with a lot more documentation. All these legal documents, I don't have to give those to my bank again. They have, because I have a loan with them. But if you have no loan with your bank, they may require that. Now, if you have a checking account set up with that bank, then they would have that information from you setting up that checking account. And it's kind of the same information that they would collect then. Typically, driver's license, filing with the Secretary of State, and EIN number that's filed with the federal government. And when you get that, you usually get a sheet from the federal government that says this is the number given for this entity. And those are the documents they're usually going to want. So that's what I got for applying. Calculating how much your payroll is going to be, how much you can get. We'll get to how do we get it forgiven later. But this is basically the bank request. This is the payroll calculation. You're going to do your payroll protection application along with your bank application. You're going to collect all of this information for them. And that's going to make it easier for them to verify that what you've put into there is correct. And once you're done with that, you're good to go. That gives the package that you give to them. So ideally, you would put all this together for them all in one shot, because then there's less back and forth. But just like doing your taxes or anything else, you're going to give them all your information. They're going to come back, ask you questions. It's going to be a back and forth. And meanwhile, everybody, please understand, they're inundated. Every bank is inundated. I know, because my friend's a banker. This is who I'm dealing with. We're friends, and we're dealing with this. And it's crazy for them right now. Again, they're now Walmart, where everybody wants toilet paper and there's nothing left on the shelf. So now the banker has to put everybody in line, do a limit of 1, try and figure out how we're going to process this, or, order all the reinforcements. Literally every loan officer in every bank is being trained on how to do this and verify all the info in there. It takes time. And we're all anxious as hell with this great uncertainty in front of us. We want to make sure we get our money. It's crazy right now. So have a little empathy for our bankers. At the same time, prep all these forms if you can. The one that's usually the hardest for people to deal with is the form for personal financial statement. Nobody likes this form. Sometimes it takes you a lot of time to get this information together. And since you're signing a federal document that says I'm signing this under, that I can be sued for perjury if I lie on this, it's a serious document. So you don't want to bullshit it and just guess all your numbers. You want to be decently close. And again, also up here now, there's an as of date up here. They're going to want that probably updated at 3/31. so that it's fairly current. Again, none of this information prevents you from getting a loan. It's just information they're typically required to collect for all SBA loans. And this is the real problem that the government's thrown out here with the CARES Act, is they basically said everybody's eligible, everybody can go get these loans. But bank systems aren't set up to not have all these forms in there. Banks have been setting up this system over the last 20 years working with the SBA, and they have a laundry list of all the documents that need to be included before the loan can get approved in their own system. So now those documents aren't there. What are they supposed to do? Make it up, put a placeholder? It's hard for them to change their paradigm of doing business and all of a sudden go, oh, all I need is somebody's signature and a driver's license and we're good to go. Instead, they're going, well, let's do what we've always done. Let's collect all this information. That way we're protected and we don't have to worry about it. And that is lost on the Treasury Department, and that's unfortunate. I mean, it's really unfortunate how fast they've tried to roll this out. I can tell you, I haven't got a lot of sleep in the last week because I've been literally reading this act, trying to talk to all of my clients about how it impacts them, how these calculations work. We do calculations on Tuesday. It includes independent contractors. Thursday night, they tell us that's not the calculation, and here's the new one, and apply Friday morning. And to the bank, it's the same thing. The calculation just changed, and isn't your system ready to go for the new calculation? It's absolute insanity. Hopefully, the banks are working all weekend with the SBA to get this system going, and at least it starts next week. That'll take a little anxiety off of the rest of us, eliminate some more of the uncertainty. We have plenty of uncertainty going forward. But if you're going to do a PPL loan or a PPP loan, these are the documents you need. Most of them are available right in the show notes on our website. And this document right here, this image shows you exactly what my bank's asking for. Your bank might be slightly different, but basically you need to say, here are my expenses that I'm asking my loan amount for, and here's my backup documentation. I think as we get down the line, this P&L tax return for sole proprietor independent contractor, there will be potentially additional documents that they ask for if they can get them. That could include bank statements. And again, that's why being at your bank that you do your checking account with for your business or your loans with for your business, which is usually the same, that can be very beneficial because they have all of that stuff so they can show it. So if you're running a business and they're going, prove that you made this money last year, okay, well, I can show that with income coming into the business. And then here's my tax return. So it's based off of that. So hopefully that helps everybody. That's what I got. I'm exhausted. I'm taking the rest of the weekend off. Unfortunately, my wife has to then take all of these podcasts and get them up, but hopefully those will happen very, very quickly this week so that you guys get the information you need to make the best moves for your business and your family. If this information is helpful, please pass it along to anyone that you know that can use it, anyone that's going to apply for this and why. Please like us on Facebook, go to our page and subscribe to our newsletter, read our blogs, pass it on. There's lots of financial information about lots of topics, which will become more and more relevant as people care a lot more about their finances because we're in chaos. So thanks for listening. Catch you next time.